Now we have a few different straddle entries to handstand. Now this is the straddle Stalder press, so coming from a straddle L-sit through to handstand. Then we have the more common straddle press to handstand, so just from a standing forward fold position, lifting up from tiptoes to handstand. And then we have the easier straddle jump to handstand. Today's video is going to be more looking at the straddle jump to handstand, but once we really refine that on how it can help us towards the other two movements. Now before we start working the straddle jump to handstand freestanding, ideally we're going to have a strong catch and strong freestanding handstand, a straddle handstand that again is strong and well balanced, and then we're going to understand our start positions and how to set this up. But in reality, most people are going to have to work on one or two of those or all three. So let's go through them in detail. So number one, that catch, ideally it should be nice and strong, stable, and be able to move around between under balance and over balance. If we can't move around between those two, trying to jump into our balance window, if our window of balance is only tiny, we have to try and jump into this gap every time. So ideally we want to have that big window, so between under balance and over balance, that we can jump into. And we develop that with the back to wall drill for over balance, pulling the heels off, using the fingertips while reaching up tall. First with repetitions, and then repetitions to holds. Then we want to do the same for our under balance, but the other way around. And now pulling from the wall using the shoulders, so the toes slide down the wall until they come off. I push up to my strong handstand and then back to the wall again without collapsing or overusing the hips. What we don't want to do here is pike the hip and flick around or take the body in that direction, because we're going to end up falling. So become an expert at those two drills. Window of balance is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and make that catch position for the jump so much easier to find. Now the wall is also our friend when we're learning the straddle handstand. Now ideally this is done back to wall. We're going to have to fine tune the distance our hands are away from the wall depending on our flexibility. So for me, if I kick up to my straight handstand there, my heels are against the wall. When I open to my straddle, my butt goes backwards, lightly touches the wall, and my feet are piked, or my hips are piked in this direction away from the wall. So butt in one direction, feet in the opposite direction. See, my shoulders are still on top of my hands, and then when I go back to my straight, my heels lightly touch the wall. So I'm learning to go between them and also learning how to fix this straddle position in so it becomes one piece with the torso. So the legs are coming forwards like this, locking into the torso, and now it's one piece. So that's a great drill of learning the straddle position by itself, but also the transition from the straddle to the straight. And really pay attention to what I'm doing there between the straddle position where the butt is touching the wall and then the heels touching and the hip opening in that straight position. What I'm not doing is opening like this. I'm opening like that. So butt go backwards, feet in that direction, not this direction. So there, and then I go back to that position, back to that position. So that's the end section, or the last half of the jump from the floor. So we can constantly work on that straight handstand balance to increase the balance window. We can constantly work on our straddle position and technique to get longer holds in it and also make it more efficient and more comfortable to hold for time. And then if you have the ability already, practicing that same thing freestanding. So I'm in my straight handstand, straddle, I pike, my butt goes backwards, my feet come forwards, and then I come back to my straight, opening the hip. And a good place to aim for is to get to, you can do 5 to 10 of those repetitions between straddle and straight freestanding. And then we can look at the full straddle jump back to wall. So I'm going to have my hands a little bit further away from the wall than I did for the straddle hold, create a bit more space, a bit more clearance. Shoulders are on top of the hands, feet are shoulder width apart. I'm going to put lots of weight into my hands and shoulders so the base feels very strong. I'm going to lower the hips by bending the knees, but try and keep the shoulders still on top of that base. Jump, pass through straddle, use the wall at the top if I need to, and then I'm going to come back through that path back to my start position. Check that's the same, and then go for another repetition. So I can just fine tune that movement. Now if you find it feels very clunky as you go up with straight legs and your mobility or your hips don't like that straight movement, one option is to bend the knees slightly as you pass through the restricted area. So exactly the same movement, but when you jump, you go through, you have a bit of a bend in the knees. I actually had a bit of a bend in my elbows as well there. So just play and find your comfortable pathway to get up to handstand. Don't think it has to look super pretty. Now, if you do struggle with that and can't get all the way up, what I'd recommend you do is do exactly the same movement, but with the down only. So you kick up to your handstand, pass through your straddle, finish, and then try and mimic the pathway back up again. And then if you're starting to do that quite cleanly, you're not really touching the wall, then you can just try the same thing freestanding. So exactly the same setup, shoulders on top of the hands, lots of weight into the base, bend the knees, drop the hips, jump, pass through straddle, finishing your freestanding handstand, come back down the way you went up, check the base, check the setup, go again. That wasn't so good, I had to catch with the elbows a little bit. So go again, and keep refining that movement. If you need to, just do the eccentric, kick up to your straight handstand, pass through the eccentric straddle, finish, replicate on the way back up again. Follow the pathway. Now I've looked at the straddle jump itself, now let's look at how the jump can help us with our press handstand. Now most people's jump when they first start is going to have a way more weight into their legs and their hips like this, not much weight in their hands, and then when they jump forwards and up and do something like that. So there's a quick transfer of weight from back here to there, and there's not much conditioning that's carrying over to the press movement. Now we could just work with that one, so you jump up like this, up to your handstand, and then you work on an eccentric press back down, trying to keep more weight into the upper back shoulders and transfer weight back to the feet as late as possible. But a better way to attack it would be to try and make the jump more like the press. And we can do that with the setup and also the speed or the momentum we use. So setup is going to be more weight into the hands and shoulders, upper back, less weight in the toes. So I'm trying to get as much weight forwards as I can, and then I'm just going to drop the hip and do a little jump to my handstand, and then the same eccentric on the way back down. So the tricky bit to get right is when you're transferring the weight back into the feet for the actual jump part, dropping the hip a little bit and popping back up again. And that's just going to come through repetition of just trying to go from this position, more there, drop back a little bit, try and jump, I can't get up, okay, I need more jump, just a little bit more, and now I can get up. And then just think of it as a dial, and you're just slowly putting the dial backwards, decreasing the amount of momentum, the amount of jump that you're using, and increasing the amount of press strength. Now remember, we can do all of those drills close to the wall if we need to, even if you don't need the wall from a balance point of view, but you just need it from a safety, make you feel comfortable or happy point of view. Now another method that works really well is to keep the jump exactly the same, but start to work from a deficit. We start to raise the hands up higher than the feet. So now I do exactly the same technique, drop the weight back, jump, and then catch at the top, come back down again. That way we could use the same power in the jump. We're going to have to try and take over with some press strength to fill the gap created by the deficit. And then all I do is I reduce the amount of momentum, speed or power from the jump, and or increase the height of the step, and do exactly the same thing. Now obviously there's a prerequisite here that you need to be comfortable handstanding on something that's higher. Now when we feel like we're getting very close to the press handstand, what we can do is instead of using a jump to help us, we could use momentum of shifting the weight backwards and then forwards. So go into my standard start position, up onto tiptoes, and if I can't lift off the floor, I back off, and then I go forwards with momentum, and then do a little jump that's only coming from the feet doing this. So pushing into the floor and coming up. So I'm just doing this type of movement as I come back. So watch again. So I go up onto tiptoes, start the press handstand, back, and then I'm just going to give myself a flick to come up. Now obviously you need to be very, very close, but that can get you over the line, and then all you do is back off on how much you're using from that movement and just refine it again with that dial technique. Now the same technique can work if you're on a slope. So if you've got a slope driveway or something and you work like that, and I'm in this direction falling forwards, that can help to get you up. But remember, both of those techniques are going to encourage you to go that direction. So you are more likely to overbalance at the top of the handstand or feel like you're going to face plant when you're trying to actually go up. You can use exactly the same jump techniques to help you on that Stalder press if you already have the press handstand, but I'd raise the hands up even higher so we now have more of a deficit. The hip is much lower compared to the hands. I jump just as much as I need to get up into my handstand, and then when I'm at the top, I can come back down and do an eccentric of the Stalder press. So this jump technique will definitely help you towards your press handstand, but I would still prioritize two other drills over it. So number one, eccentric press. So kicking up to a freestanding handstand or against the wall, coming through the pathway as slow as possible. This way you're getting all of the pathway conditioned with time under tension till I get to that position, and then using a partial range drill to go up. So you're getting concentric work, just not through the full pathway. And then using that jump exercise as accessory work
to help you put it all together. Let me know down in the comments what level you're at. Are you working your jumps or are you working your presses? If you're after coaching, check out my app or website. Links are down in the description. Me and Rosie will see you in the next one.